What's up, everybody? Welcome to Fangents. I'm Jake Carter. Along with me, as always, Aaron Lewis.
Hello. Welcome to be here. Excited to be here. What are we talking about today,
I'm very
Jake?
excited to be here. I'm excited to be here because today we are talking about The Last of Us TV show. Based on an acclaimed video game, which we'll get into and talk about in a little bit. But I think at first we should talk about kind of our initial thoughts that we had on the show. So, kick it over to you, Aaron. What did you think of The Last of Us Season 1?
I think that it is the best TV show of 2023.
I agree with that.
Which is not saying much because it's only March.
I know, it's premiering in January too, right?
But no, I honestly think like the caliber of HBO was perfect for this story. I was always talking about with like coworkers and friends throughout the week. Super excited for each week's episode. I was captivated for the 9 weeks that it was going on. So I honestly probably gonna binge it again here in the next couple weeks. Yeah, watch it all the way through. I think it was fantastic. If you haven't seen it, then why are you watching this video? Also, too, spoilers, right? We're talking spoilers.
Oh yeah, spoilers galore.
So be warned.
Or gore.
So if you have not seen this. Or seen us. If you have not seen Last of Us Season 1, hit pause, go watch it, and come back, because we're going to spoil the living crap out of this.
Yep.
But I thought it was an amazing show. Everybody should go watch it. I'm super stoked there's a Season 2.
Oh, me too. I mean, this has been like my most anticipated show for the longest time, and only because I love the video game. I played the video game when it first came out 10 years ago. Can't believe it's already been 10 years. And I remember playing the game being like, wow, this would make for the perfect, show or movie. And I think they just delivered full stop. Like, I think every week, even knowing like where the story was going and like all those beats, I think they did enough with the sort of characters and the cast and obviously the differences that they had in the show versus the game to really keep people who were familiar with the material on the edge of their seats, while also, keeping people who have never experienced the game at all really gripped week to week.
Perfect example, kind of getting ahead of ourselves, is I've played the game. I've watched other people play the game. Heck, I'm so much of a nerd. I've watched YouTube videos of all the cutscenes put together, right? And still, episode 7, 8, 5, 6. Whichever one Joel gets stabbed in, right?
Yeah.
No, it is 7.
He gets stabbed in 6 because then 7 is the Riley.
That's right. Yeah. Anyway, point is, he gets stabbed, and even I'm like, oh shit. Like, oh wait, now I know he lives. I played the game.
Yeah.
But still, like they did a fantastic job, like you said, of even if you've played the game, even if you know the story in and out, even if you know how it's gonna end, they still kind of temper that expectation just a little bit, so to kind of keep you on your toes a little bit.
Yeah. No, totally. And like, I think the Joel getting stabbed is a perfect example of one of the differences that they had in the show versus the game. And, I think a lot of people, when they're adapting, source material, whether it's comic books, video games, books, just anything, people get very up in arms if something's not 100% like one for one.
Yeah.
And I think in the case of The Last of Us, that proves that that's complete bullshit and that you don't necessarily need to do that all the time if it's done well, right? And I think that some of the changes that they made in the show versus the game were to the benefit of it. And obviously that was because, you had the creator of the game, Neil Druckmann, directly involved with creating the show, along with Craig Mazin, who did a fantastic job doing Chernobyl and some other shows. And I think them as kind of a powerhouse duo, like creating this, like, of course, when Craig goes to Neil and like, hey, what if we, change this? And Neil's like, oh man, I wish I would have thought about that. Which, by the way, all of those inside the episodes that take place after the episodes and also the HBO podcast that they did, please watch them because they offer such great insight into just the behind the scenes and what goes into, kind of the thinking of how to adapt, a game like The Last of Us. But yeah, I mean, what were some of the main differences from the game to the show that you really stuck out to you? Were there any?
Well, I mean, to try and just jump into it, episode 3.
Yeah.
The whole Bill and Frank story.
Oh my god. And
kind of rolling back a little bit, to your point, I think why The Last of Us worked so well adapted into an HBO series is because the story of The Last of Us is a solid movie, highbrow TV caliber kind of story. Like it could be a novel when, like the whatever book awards, or the Newbery Awards, they don't matter. Whatever book awards there are. I think a lot, like, no offense to video games, love video games, but I don't think a lot of video games have that same kind of like narrative story. There are a handful out there. For instance, God of War, 2018 and God of War Ragnarok, how like that's kind of being in the works with like Amazon now, like looking forward to that. But those have great narrative stories at the heart of the game. And I think where they succeeded is because of that. They didn't need to have any gameplay elements to propel the narrative forward, which I feel like a lot of video games do. So, for instance, perfect example is like the Assassin's Creed movie. Not good.
Never saw it because I was
don't.
By that. I just didn't want to, break me.
But like, there is a cool story in Assassin's Creed. Before you come after me, yes, there is a cool story within the Assassin's Creed, like obviously. But a lot of what makes that game fun is that you get to be the character, that you get to play in all these different, kind of time periods depending on which game you're playing, and whatever character it is, like Ezio, or I forget the Nathan Altair. Or whatever, Altair, all of them, right? That's
Ezio.
Ezio, thank you. I was like, I said that wrong. Ezio. But so again, in that game, right, like you being that character, you playing that, like, POV in a sense, is what makes that story great and very all encompassing. While with Last of Us, there's so much going on outside of you playing as Joel and Ellie for a little bit, that I think it makes that experience kind of more wholesome. Yeah. And that's why this really worked.
And I think, to your point, I think one of the, differences of adapting from a game to a show, and specifically with this show, that a lot of people I've seen online have been kind of up in arms about or upset about, was kind of the lack of, infected clickers that were in the show. But I think that was done for the sake of moving, the story along and really developing these characters and stuff. Because, as cool as it would have been to see, Joel take out a whole room full of clickers or bloater or whatever, I don't think we needed that, right? Like, and obviously the show we got was even more impactful because of these character moments that we really got to live with, Pedro and Bella's like versions of these characters that really just embodied the actual characters, who they were, So yeah.
No, I mean, just literally kind of echo chamber, right? If like, for all the people out there that were really criticizing it, of like, oh, I wish there's more like, XYZ. Like a lot of people in episode 3 were, I think it was well received for the most part, episode 3, the Bill and Frank story. But a lot of people were like, well, that's such a great point in the game because, you take on like all these clickers with Bill as playing as Joel, and like you get to like hit up a bloater for the first time in like the gymnasium. And while yes, that is a great part in the game, and you do kind of, shit your pants a little bit when it happens, that gameplay doesn't really translate well. Because how do you follow that? Because otherwise, it's just going to be kind of an action kind of series. But that's not the story that Neil Druckmann wanted to tell when he made this video game. Yeah. Right? Like, I don't know. I'm also a huge video game fan I'm a huge fan of video games that have you kind of experience something with it. Basically be like a interactive storytelling. Like if a movie was interactive. Right? Yeah,
it's immersive experience,
And so I think Last of Us is one of the pinnacle of video games in general, but I think it's also like top of the class in that respect too. So I mean, we can just keep going about how damn well it is.
Oh my God, so true.
And that's why you're here, right?
So true. And I think one last thing about, like living with this kind of version of the story was, I think they really got to explore that theme of love, what are some of the things you would be willing to do for the people that you love, right? And like, I think so many times in, media, all movies and books and everything, it's always explored like, oh yeah, love, triumphs everything, whatever. It's the good side of it, right? But what does that look like when it actually hurts other people or like impacts others and has dark side? Yeah. And there is a dark side to loving somebody unconditionally or just like doing things out of love. And I think that's so compelling to show.
I like how they keep saying, they don't say it's bad or even like dark side of you, but they say like dangerous.
It is, yeah.
They kept like, like if you watch any of like behind the scenes, like end of the episode of any of the episode, little thingy, whatever they call it, or the podcast, Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin, they keep saying dangerous, like how dangerous love is, or like dangerous. And I love that because it is, right? So here's a question for you, Jake. When I played the game, I was full-heartedly supportive of Joel. I was like, heck yeah, let's kill them all. Let's save the girl. Well, let's save Ellie. That sounds like, whatever. Yeah. But like, let's save Ellie because, you guys are now family unit. And I love this. Watching the show now and not having like that, like, kind of immersive experience as the player. I really like was kind of, I still agree with Joel, but I find like I kind of came more center to like the conflict that is. And I don't know, it was kind of a weird experience because kind of like you said, like I know the story, I've played the game, I know it's coming. I should be, kind of, oh yeah. But I'm watching this, especially that last scene of him coming through and him just like mowing down these guys, and you're just like, oh.
Yeah.
Was this the right choice?
Right. I remember after playing it first time and like obviously growing up, well, not obviously, I'm telling you all now, but growing up, I'm a huge gamer, play Xbox with all my friends after school and stuff. And when The Last of Us came out, I remember being like, wow, this is such a cinematic experience. It's, same studio that did Uncharted, like I loved all those games. Yeah. And I remember when you get to the end of The Last of Us and you realize what Joel's decision is, that was the first time me playing a game that I was like, wow, am I the bad guy? Like, is everything, like we were leading up to this point of, saving humanity and all this stuff, this mission to try to, help whatever. And he makes this selfish ass choice and you're like, oh, okay. Wow, that did not see that coming, Yeah. And I think for me, it was kind of hard to reckon with. Like, I mean, I definitely agreed with his choice at the time, and kind of like you, I think after subsequent playthroughs, I played the first game now like 3 times, and then played through the second game, and then after watching this show, I definitely am more like, I can see where that kind of like Sophie's choice sort of moral dilemma comes in, because wow, it's powerful. Yeah, it's pretty cool, but.
I don't know. As I've gotten older, and like I'm not even like crazy old, but like as I've gotten older, like I do find I really love TV shows and movies that really grapple with the kind of grayness of life, especially like this kind of movie, like our show. It's post-apocalyptic. There's clickers everywhere. People are getting infected. There's no centralized kind of government. It's global. Like, typically you kind of historically you're like, oh, okay, this is kind of a survival thing. You're gonna have like the horror, but the fact that there's like they still found this area to make you question like humanity and like the grayness of it, and like the kind of philosophy question of like, do you try to save the many? I say try very intentionally because there's still no proof that it would work.
Yeah, and that's I think the other thing, right, that makes it extra dangerous is like who knows if that would have actually gone through and worked. Like it was just kind of a theory, right? But what are you willing to sacrifice for someone you care about? Like, so excellent. Like, top tier storytelling. Like, kudos to you, Neil. Like, crushed it. And I mean, there was like so much that happened in this season. Like, do you think that, kind of one season was enough? Because like, I know they've already announced season 2's happening, which I'm so excited because the second game just ups the ante so much more, because there's so much more complexities, characters, etc. So like the fact that they need to do, multiple seasons, I think makes sense for that. How did you feel with this first season doing the first game? Do you think there could have been more room to breathe with certain episodes, or do you think it was fine?
Coming into this, when they were like, it's gonna be 9 episodes, the first episode being, just over 2 hours? I don't know, like long, like it was like a movie length, right?
Because they like combined 2 episodes. Yeah.
So, seeing it being like, oh, it's gonna be 9 episodes, my first thought was that's not enough.
Yeah.
Like I don't really think so. But that's a big old but next to it. Having watched the season all the way through, I think it was a good choice. Like they could have gone through and made it into 2 seasons, kind of really embellished a lot of the world and kind of gone into those details. But those kind of details I think that we'd want to feel the world building weren't necessarily in the game, because those are filled with gameplay moments. And those don't, like we talked about, those don't really translate well to like movie and TV. So I think this is a masterclass. If you're any type of director, producer, whatever, this is a masterclass in trimming the fat. And having like a lean story that I feel like just bam gets to the point. And excellent job. So that, I mean, I would agree. Like I think my initial thought is, oh man, that's gonna be too little. But having watched it, I'm like, no, that was perfect. Like I am satiated.
Yeah, totally. I had a great word. I kind of the same exact boat. I was like, wow, yeah, how are they going to do this for 9 episodes? And in my brain, I was trying to like plot down, okay, they'll probably get to Bill and Frank by this episode, or Bill, I guess. And then, try to get to Sam and Henry at this one, and, kind of figuring out. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, I was also worried. I was like, ooh, are they going to have enough room and stuff to breathe? But they did. And I think it actually worked in their favor of having a more kind of just condensed to one season story.
So. That being said, though, the fact that like the news has come out that season 2 or the second game is going to be broken into 2 seasons, season 2, season 3, I think makes total sense because that story, 1, is bigger, and 2 has a lot more meat in the sense of world building and storytelling to be that is there, right? And so to break that up, if they still apply that same kind of like cut all the fat off, have a nice lean story that gets you with a good punch, I think it's going to be sensational.
Yeah, no, totally. So let's talk about some of the, I think, in my opinion, some of the best parts of this game, which are some of the side characters that you meet, and some of these like little side stories and quests. Because very video game thing is, you're playing as the hero, and then you're going off meeting all these NPCs, non-playable characters, right? And just like the cool storytelling moments that come from this. I think it's safe to say, and based on your answer to your favorite episode and mine too, Bill and Frank, like, that is how you do a bottle episode, first of all. And second of all, the fact that Frank you don't even get to see Frank in the game except for his hanging body. Spoilers. His skeleton. And also in the game, like, Frank and Bill, they were at odds at the end. Like, Frank was like, I'd rather die than spend another second with you, and all this stuff. Where in the game, it's like you get this beautiful episode of like 2 people who are so in love with each other and like find each other in the midst of the absolute worst time ever. And like the way that they explored, again, the themes of love with this, I think were so beautifully done that I honestly could have watched a whole show about Bill and Frank. Like, honestly.
Easily. Shout out to Nick Offerman and
Murray Bartlett.
Thank you. Yep, Murray Bartlett.
Shout out White Lotus.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know where to start. Like, I'm speechless after that episode. Like, that's gonna win. First of all, they're gonna win Emmys.
Oh, yeah.
That episode's gonna win some type of Emmy. I don't know all the Emmy categories, but it's gonna win something.
Yeah.
Because one of my biggest gripes with TV shows and movies in general is when you're telling a story that we're still not fully grasping like the concept of where the story is trying to take us, which is an intentional storytelling like element.
Sure.
And you cut to a different story that's still within the same world, or that, introduces new characters, that are going to be crucial later down.
Yeah.
To have like such a kind of a hard switch to the story of Bill and Frank, and like they did a good job of kind of introducing it, but like just to switch it so quickly and just focus the whole episode on them and nail it the way they do, because every minute of every scene of the Bill and Frank story has some type of tie back, either thematically or like in the actual story itself, to the greater like consequences of the season. So like any person that's like, oh, it was good, but I don't see the like relation. It's love, dude. The whole story of this is about, like we talked about, the like how dangerous love can be, and like what and just kind of thought provoke that and test that and like just make you think, right?
Bill was like one of the most like closed off, just kind of examples of a person could be. And then his heart opens up to this guy he finds in one of his traps, right? Like, how fucking beautiful is that,
Yeah.
Like, like, I love it.
And so it ties back to exactly what you just said, right? Like that kind of like that jaded character, that closed off character, that character that like the world has ended and so have I, so now I'm just like in survival mode.
Yeah.
And to see that slowly open up to somebody that they take in and they love and they like, makes their life better. Straight up foreshadows, right? With like Ellie and Joel, the only difference is that Ellie is not a more highfalutin fine wine kind of person like Frank is.
Yeah.
She's also kind of, rough and gruff, not afraid to stab you in the head kind of person. So
yeah,
that's how we get to the end result there. But no, that episode gets high. I mean, the whole season itself, each episode gets high praises, but that one specifically, like came out of left field for me, and like I was not expecting to be impacted so much by a Bill and Frank story going into it, knowing that we were going to get Frank in the season, with like kind of the news and the headlines coming into it. So yeah.
Another set of side stories, characters I want to talk about is Sam and Henry. And
well, first of all, if you don't know, we live in the Boston area. We're originally from the Kansas City area on the Kansas side. So shout out to KC being in The Last of Us. That was really cool.
And another difference, is they switched from Pittsburgh to KC. And I think that just makes sense from a geographical standpoint. So but it was so cool to see that hometown pride getting represented.
It was.
So
sorry, cut you out there.
But no, Sam and Henry, and I think kind of also going back to what we're talking about, the pacing of the show, the fact that we got 2 episodes with them, kind of even building up to that, I think was nice, right? Like they didn't just try to cram that into one episode. Like I thought that flowed really well.
Well, I guess we got introduced to them.
And
then we had the one episode.
Yeah, and we got the full episode, right?
But 2 episodes in Kansas City, which I was not expecting.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking it was going to be kind of a one done flyby, But I love the differences that they made, even with these characters, of having Sam be deaf, and like the representation with that was awesome, and just seeing how that changed the dynamic with Henry, because like Henry's also having to take on this kind of like parental role, even though he's a sibling.
Yeah.
And now to have that even stepped up another level because of his, deafness, like,
and he depends on
him. Right.
Right.
And it's just, oh man, there were moments in that episode that I was like, wow, this is.
And backstory on us, like Jake and I are both older brothers. Granted, our sisters aren't that much younger than us, but like, I don't know, like I was thinking about that. I was like, oh man, if that was like my sister.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I would totally want to be like, all right, we're a unit, we're a family. Like, our age difference isn't that big, but like still, it's like we're in this together. And so to have Henry kind of take on this more, well, shit, I guess I'm kind of like the parent now.
Yeah.
To now, a kid that like is deaf in a world that, like, let's be real, like how many people still know how to sign?
Right.
I mean, God knows, I don't know how.
Yeah.
So like that next level of connection that they have, and then the whole story with him being sick, and like the reason why he like turned in Kathleen, thank you. Kathleen's brother was so he can get the meds to like save his brother, and like once again mirroring the decision and mirroring the actions that we're gonna see in the last episode with Joel and Ellie. Like masterclass, man. Masterclass.
And that's like one of the reasons I really love the characters of Sam and Henry, besides them just being obviously their own tag team duo, is kind of the fact that they are sort of a mirrored version of Joel and Ellie, and like just how their end meets like tragically. Like, oh my god, it's like that end scene of when they're they put him in the ground or whatever, and like the graves, and Ellie like writes like I'm sorry on Sam's like little tablet thing, like, oh man. And like Joel's just like looking down there, and I think it was Craig Mazin or Neil and one of the behind the scenes things was talking about how like that was Joel like reflecting, thinking of like, wow, this could be Ellie and I if we don't be careful, or like if we keep going down
what do you say road.
Like,
that was like a paraphrase. I think that he was like, that was like his like damn moment
of
like shit,
this kind of like realization of like, oh okay, I'm in it with this kid. So
in for a penny, in for a pound, whatever that saying is.
Right. Well, speaking of Kathleen, I think it was cool also with the adaptation aspect of the show, adding these new characters, because there's a list of characters that were added to the show, and I was really curious because I remember when this show was announced and they were talking about who got cast and stuff, they mentioned there were a couple new characters, and so I think Kathleen as kind of being this very soft-spoken, like elementary teacher kind of vibe person who's leading this like armed militia that had a revolt in Kansas City, I thought was so interesting.
I'll tell you what, I have never come across a character that I hate so much, but love them so much because I hate them. Like, they wrote her so well.
Yeah, they did.
Because the thing is, you totally understand.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You've been living 20 years in an apocalyptic world, right? Which, like, take out the clickers and just think about, like, society collapsing on itself, right?
Yeah.
And you're, there's probably this, like, nice, kind, sweet-hearted, gentle person that now this world has hardened you and corrupted you. but you still are like to your core that person.
Mhm.
Like you're gonna end up like her.
And not to mention that like your brother was the leader of this group
Yeah.
before you had to take it over. You know, like, oh my god, it is
Like,
insane.
And so like I don't know, it's also kind of cool because I feel like we don't get to see like those kind of antagonists or villains
Mhm.
of like that kind of. We see like the very poise and the very like kind of
Stoic,
facade,
like, yeah,
right? Like, oh, I'm gonna be nice to you so I can like stab you in the back later. We see like those kind of villains, but we don't see like these kind of antagonists like her of that. Like, I keep coming back to like corrupted like niceness. Like that's
Mhm.
that's what it seemed like to
Yeah.
me. Right?
It
It seemed
really
like
did.
we need to like plug her back in and like, you know, hit reboot to like update the
Mhm.
software. Like that's what it was, like corrupted niceness. Like
Yeah,
it was scary.
right.
She scared the shit out of me. Like out of everybody, out of all the new characters, even the clickers, like she was the scariest.
Yeah.
She kills the doctor.
I know.
My perception, the only doctor in Kansas City, the one
Right.
that birthed her, right? She bam.
Yep. Just off them like nothing.
Oh,
Gosh.
freaky, man.
Yeah. And I also think it's interesting because Kathleen kind of brings up the question that Joel later kind of answers with his decision in the end of when she's talking to, you know, Henry about, well, you think that your brother is more important than my brother was, or like other children. And so, you know, just that moral dilemma that
Kids
Joel is
die
like,
every day, Henry.
Right.
First of all, terrible line. Like if anybody says anything like that, you know they're gonna be dying.
Oh
soon.
yeah.
You
gotta
know they're gonna be dying.
Mhm.
And the fact she dies by a kid clicker.
Yeah. Poetry. Just chef's kiss, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then another cool new character that I liked was that they actually got to show Ellie's mom, Anna.
Oh yeah.
And also the fact that they got Ashley Johnson, who voices and does more than voice, is Ellie in the video game.
Yeah, mocap.
Like,
did you listen? I'm sorry, I totally cut you off.
Go
In the podcast of the last episode, so Troy Baker, who voiced and mocap for Joel in the video game, hosts it, and he has like Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann. And on the last episode, they had Ashley on.
Yeah.
And
to listen to that,
it was so cool. Like, guys, go listen to it because like it just especially if you're into all this stuff and like love to get deep get a deep dive into like us. Go listen to it because they Neil talks about how Ashley is so imbued into Ellie. Like a lot of like things that like are, you know, her personality got put into Ellie. So like she is Ellie.
Like her love of space was because of Ashley. Like loving space. Like,
and like Ashley would change some lines around and be like, because what was it? There was, I forget, like if you listen to the podcast, Neil was saying like there was like a scene where like Ellie didn't really do something. And Ashley was like, oh no, I think she would fight back. And he was like, you know what, you're right. And so like a lot of like those little things. And so she is Ellie. Like that character is her. And the moment you hear her talk in the episode, I'm like, oh, that's Ellie.
Yep.
It's cool because she's Ellie's mom.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And like, again, what a beautiful just like symbolism of like the woman who basically created this character just birthing out this other version of the character. I think it's like so well done and just like a nice full circle moment. Yeah, I was so pleased. And I was so happy that also Troy Baker, who is Joel in the game, got to, you know, be James in the David episode, in episode 8. So yeah, I love that they're bringing him, and then also
and the fact that they were like actually pertinent roles too.
Yeah, they weren't just like throwaway.
Yeah,
like,
they weren't just like, you know, an extra in the back. Like they had speaking lines like in the episodes they're in. Like they were like kind of prominent figures in those episodes. Like
and even, you know, Merle Dandridge, who plays Marlene, like that was Marlene in the game. Like, and she got to come back and actually play her. Like, that's so cool.
And then Jeffrey Pierce, who played Tommy.
Oh yeah,
he got to play Perry in Kansas City.
The Kathleen's right hand man. Yeah, that was cool. As soon as I heard his voice, I was like, cool. I know, I recognize those. Yeah.
Oh, I know we kind of talked about like the adaptations earlier on, but like I love that we got introduced to Jackson.
Yes.
So if you don't know, if you didn't play the video game and you're here because you watched the show, Jackson isn't introduced to us until how it is, I should say, like functioning with a movie theater and a dining hall and all that stuff.
You don't get to see it at all.
Yeah, like that's not introduced until the second game. You hear about it in the first game because you're trying to, you know, fix the dam to get electricity to go to Jackson. So I think that was really, once again, a big gameplay moment in the game. I think it was a brilliant choice to introduce that now.
Yeah.
And kind of show us like what life is to like live there.
Right.
And, you know, I love the line of like, oh, so you're communist. No, we're not communists. Yeah. This is a commune. The actual definition. Oh.
Yeah. Tommy having this existential crisis
like,
of,
oh god,
oh wow,
especially you know, being like a veteran in you know, Desert Storm and Shield, I believe, and then, you know, being 2003, like America not that friendly to those kind of ideals at that time. But
and it was nice to like you said, kind of get to explore Jackson a little bit. I feel like they fleshed out Maria, Tommy's wife, a little bit more in this game too.
I actually really liked her in her portrayal in this, because I did not like her in the game.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, because I mean, here she's portrayed as like one of the leaders of the Jackson community, and I think her interaction that she has with Ellie, where she's like cutting Ellie's hair and they're just like talking, and the fact that that's how she finds out that Joel had a daughter,
that too,
Sarah, like, oh man.
I was gonna say, I really like their like little like kind of like verbal standoff. There, right? Do you know what kind of man Joel is? He killed people, like, or whatever they say.
We've all
right?
killed people.
Yeah. Never innocent ones or whatever. Or like, oh, Tommy did it too. Like whatever she says, I love that scene. But yeah, that's how she finds out about Sarah. And my God, was I so happy when she found out. Because even playing the game, like, I know how that goes and how like that's not something I talk about till like later on. I was like, just tell her.
Right.
I'll make your relationship better. So we finally got to that point, and the big fight and blowout that they have, it's almost like, shot for shot from the game. Love
so
that.
Good. And speaking of Sarah, I mean, Sarah.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
That whole first episode, I think, was so well done of like how they teed up, kind of the world and really living with, what life was like right before it ended. I think it was beautifully done. Also, love the cold opens that they did for this show. We haven't talked about those yet.
Yeah.
And like kind of explaining more of the actual disease and its origins. That was so fascinating.
So in one of like the end of the episode interview things, behind the episode, Craig says when they open up the show, especially for people that haven't played the game, he's like, we want you to think that this show is about Sarah, that Sarah's the protagonist, and damn it, she is. I was sold from the jump. Like, I was like, and then you get to that point where playing the game, I know what happens to her. I know that she's gonna die, unfortunately, and I'm still like, no, like, God, because I totally am blanking on her. I think it's like Nico.
Yeah, Nico Parker. Andy Newton's daughter.
Yeah. And so she did a fantastic job. My God. Yeah. Also, I love the fact that they kind of expounded upon like the cordyceps and how like it got into the flower source in Indonesia,
which was like hinted at in the games, but never really fully explored. So I love that they use this space to really kind of flesh that out.
And that cold open of like in Indonesia,
oh my God,
when like it started to happen, and he's like, "What can we do?" And the professor's like,
"Bomb." Oh,
I get goosebumps just thinking about that.
Yeah, I was like, okay.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, damn.
But
it's so good. So I think like,
hold on.
Go for it.
We talked about a lot of side characters here. We got to talk about the biggest of the big bads.
Oh, David.
Mr. David himself.
Yeah. That I remember also very vividly playing the game. That section really messed me up.
I played that, and I took like I think a week off before I went back to the game because of that.
I was unwell after playing that. His just whole creepy nature of being a pedophile and all that stuff. Not to mention Hannibal. Really messed up. So I
do appreciate how, and my memory's a little fuzzy on this, where like I feel like in the show they made it more of a point to be like, we're doing this as a last resort.
Yes.
Like, was that in the game?
No, that was
okay. That's what I thought.
It might be like kind of implied in the game.
I feel like they definitely went out of their way to justify the cannibalism a little bit, which like still messed up. Right. Don't eat people. That's like,
please.
But like I kind of appreciate that, because I'm like, okay, we're trying to not make him the embodiment of the devil.
Even just like visually, like how David looks in the game versus the show. Like in the game, he definitely looks like what you would imagine a cannibal to look like: longer hair, big bushy beard. And then in the show, he's literally like a preacher, like very clean cut suburban dad kind of vibes. And I think they nailed him. Like that whole
easily
sequence. And even though again they left out, a sequence of like him and Ellie fighting infected, it's like you didn't need that, because
once gameplay moments.
Yeah, because just based on their conversation that they had, like you can tell that Ellie's like being bought into the bullshit that he's saying, right? And then when it's the realization that, oh wow, he knows who I am. Oh, I'm the guy. I'm the girl that was with the guy that killed those raiders, and that happened to be a part of David's crew. Like, oh man, just so well done. And like, God, it's just so good.
The one thing I really love that they changed from the game to the show, and they talk about this, Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin, is that so in the game, right? The big battle happens with David, Ellie, she finally like gets him. She's like, just hacking at him, and it's Joel who like pulls her off in the game. And I like how they changed that. Granted, like also because of logistics, because he's like, oh, I have the only key.
I like how Craig is like the sort of realist of like, logically, how would Joel get inside this locked place? Like, so great.
But I like that because it
cordyceps starting to get you?
Yeah. But like, it's not that, dad saves the daughter. It's not that like hero saves the heroine or like damsel, right?
Yeah.
It is her taking on the monster inside her, that killer that David talks about, that dangerous person, and just going at it until she is satisfied and finished, and then her breaking out. And so it's not, in the game of like, oh, I need to save her because the house is on fire. It's now Joel is that emotional safety, which is what Neil says, which I love, because it is that she comes out, she's frantic, and like she's on the point of breaking because of her experience, and he's able to kind of bring her back.
And I love that it
like
shows,
a parent or like a loved one would.
And I love that it shows just how capable she is.
Yeah.
Like, even though she is, a small girl, it's like she's still capable to save her own skin. Like, I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Oh, I love any character. So I don't care if it's dude, girl, they, them, like alien. Any character that has too much reliance to be saved by other characters, I think it's like cheap writing.
Totally.
So the fact that like in this and in other stories too, like those characters are capable, maybe not as capable as others, and so that's why they need help, but they're still capable. Like, I love that.
Yeah.
That's real. Even living in this world for 20 years, like almost everybody's going to have some type of skill with like a gun, a knife, or like survival skills, right? So.
Yeah. So good. I know in the last behind the scenes inside the episode thing that you mentioned with Ashley Johnson, she mentioned that, over the years, The Last of Us, they had been talking about making a movie or a show. And so the fact that they finally landed on sort of this format, I'm curious, what are your thoughts on whether we think that, show like this long form episodic was the right way to go, or if we think, a movie would have done well.
I'm so glad you asked that, Jake, because here's my thing. If it's good, I'm a glutton for it. Game of Thrones, perfect example. Great story. Well, besides... We'll exclude the last 2 seasons because I think it got a little muddled in there. Yeah. But up through, seasons 1 through 6, great storytelling, impeccable storytelling, like great pacing. The Sopranos, Wire, White Lotus, all these shows, they like do a high caliber, Chernobyl, right? High caliber quality of storytelling, and they're meticulous with it. And they don't just, it's not like a cash grab. They want to put out good products.
Right.
So if you ever have a great story, you take it to HBO. I don't think Netflix would have done this justice. I don't think Amazon would have done this justice. I don't think as a movie, I think this would have been way too rushed. I think this would have been broken up into parts. And spoiler alert, if you stick with us long enough and we do other reviews, you're going to find out I don't like movies that get broken into parts. I don't like the fact The Hobbit was made into 3 when it could have been just made into maybe 2. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I think a show format for this was perfect, and especially with HBO. Yeah.
No, I agree. I'm the same way. It's obviously you want the content to be quality. Yeah. Quality over quantity. But I will take 9 episodes of quality storytelling over a 2.5 hour movie. Like, if I can get 9-10 hours worth of that, like, sign me the hell up. Like, I'm there.
Yeah. So especially because like you feel like each week. I mean, granted, I think compared to like Game of Thrones, like Last of Us episodes, I think it's slightly shorter. I think they're more hovering around the 45-50 minute averagely, right? And so, I'll sit down every Sunday and watch like a mini movie.
Yeah.
For a show that's gonna like, I know it's gonna tell great stories, gonna have great pacing, it's gonna embellish like everything that I love about it. Like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Also, too, I get to be at home on my couch and like, eat my snacks and drink my drinks. Heck
right. Yeah. And I'm also just like a fan of how HBO does the weekly drops, because it really does bring that kind of like, I can't wait till next week's episode. Like, I love a good binge and stuff, but I do love this kind of water cooler moment that I feel like they really started with quality.
Yeah.
So
because here we are, 2-3 weeks after the last episode.
Yeah, it's been about
and people are still talking about it.
Yeah.
We're still talking to our like friends and family about it. Like,
oh my god, yeah. I'm just like, when season 2? And like the fact that this last week, Bella Ramsey, she was like, oh, I think that we're starting maybe later this year filming, and like maybe it'll come out, early 2025, which I'm like, yeah. Take your time, but I'm here for it.
Talking about Bella Ramsey, I'm going to take this moment. PSA announcement. Bella Ramsey was the best freaking Ellie that I think they could have ever gotten. Like, she nailed it. She nailed the mannerisms. She nailed the attitude. Like, because at the end of the day, I don't care about how people look when they're when they're adapting, whether it be comics or video games or whatever. It's all about the attitude and the essence of the character. And Bella and Pedro both nailed it.
Oh, yeah.
Nailed it.
Just absolutely nailed it.
Yeah.
And I think you said it right, because essence of the character, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you know who the character is and, like, can just freaking figure that out, like, you got it.
Yeah.
So, and I think they did with both.
Yeah.
And then some. Like, they added their own nuances to it, but it was enough that was still same to that character that you're like, oh, I like this. But yeah. I'm so excited. Like, I'm so glad there's more coming.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, a part of me is like, yeah, take your time, because, part 2 of the game is out, but there might be rumors that they might do a part 3, which I wouldn't hate, But, I mean, I know once part 2, once they do that, it's like, oh, it's done. So I'm like, oh, take your time.
Yeah.
But I'm excited. I'm excited to see who Abby is,
Oh,
I feel like Abby. Yeah.
We'll leave it there, just in case people don't know part 2 of the game.
If you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
Well, thanks to everyone for tuning in. I've been Jake.
No, I've been Aaron.
We'll see you next time.